Mark, sometimes you don't need analytical data to tell you the story. Just look at the situation, find the trend, and make the decision.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
It's a beautiful day for football. Welcome into the RotoBros Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Chris McConnell.
I'm Mark Wemkin.
And we are the RotoBros. Hey, we are rolling into another week of the fantasy football playoffs. It is round 2, Mark, of the fantasy playoffs. And hey, if you guys did not make it to round 2, that means you probably didn't do a very good job in round 1, but we are going to discuss that because some of our teams didn't make it either. So we're all going to be able to sort of drown in our sorrows together here in a moment. Mark, you excited for round 2?
Of course I'm excited for round 2, man. We got an awesome slate of games here. I'm going to be at the Patriots-Bengals game, so that'll be fun. I can't wait to gamble a bunch of money on that. I'm still trying to decide what props I want. Patriots are -10. I think I'm going to take the Patriots -10. What do you think?
I think I kind of like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots absolutely destroyed the Bengals. We're back to this. We're on to Cincinnati. You remember that from a few years ago? I mean, I feel
that's what I mean. I think I think I can take the Patriots spread here, or take the Patriots to cover.
Yeah, it's going to be that'll be an interesting game. Everybody's waiting for that Patriots offense to get back on track. But hey, this is one thing that I was going to save toward the end of the show, but I want to bring it up now because I'm sure everybody's wondering how Chris and Mark did in their season-long leagues in round 1. How many teams they have making it to round 2? What was the success like? So let's spill the beans, Mark. What was your success like in round 1? You heading on to round 2 in any leagues?
Could have been worse, but it could have been so much better. I made the playoffs in about 50% of my leagues, and I got bounced in half of those this week. So I did have a bye in one of them. So and of course on the team that had a bye, I have Tyler Lockett, I have DeAndre Hopkins. So I got the Nook, and who else did I have on that team? Oh, no, it's Aaron Jones I have on that team. So I got an Aaron Jones and a DeAndre Hopkins ceiling game on a week where I didn't even need it. That was a little tilting, but hey, I'm on to round 2.
Yeah, we got a little bit of Aaron Jones coming up here in the show as well. So I made it in 11 of 17 leagues. I mentioned that last week when we were talking about that. I made it 11 of 17 leagues, so about 70%. By the end of Sunday night, Mark, I was alive in 6 leagues, and I ended up moving on in only 2. Both of them, though, are 2 of my most important, most serious dynasty leagues. So I'm pretty happy about that. One of them being a money league. So I can't get too down in the dumps about it. It was just a bad week for the guys that I had on my team. Like, there were a lot of places where I had Mike Evans. Obviously, he did something nice with his one catch for 60 yards and the touchdown, and then all of a sudden, he pulls up lame on the hamstring. So he's going to be done for the year. So we're going to get to the injuries and everything here in a minute. But yeah, round 1 did not treat me very well. You got Jameis Winston, I believe is how you put it in FSA. And I got Benny Snell. So I was really excited about Benny Snell going up against Arizona. And anywhere I needed a running back, I was looking for Benny Snell. Got him in a lot of places, put him in a lot of places. And deploying him was not a good idea.
Zona's been, they're not a true pass funnel, but they've been a lot softer to passing games really than they have been to running backs. I mean, there's still a decent matchup for running backs, but Benny Snell was not a guy I was really targeting. I just felt that backfield was kind of a mess. I will say this, though. What are we making of Devlin Hodges as the quarterback here? Is he really that much better than Mason Rudolph? He is, isn't he?
Hell, is he really that much better than Ben Roethlisberger? Like, is it? No, I'm kidding, obviously. Devlin Hodges, hey, maybe they found themselves sort of a Kyle Allen sort of quarterback, like the Panthers did, like a quality,
disgusting comparison.
Backup quarterback.
Is Kyle Allen a quality backup quarterback?
I would say so. There's
Dude,
you could do a
freaking
lot
awful.
worse than Kyle Allen. You could do a lot worse.
You could do
than
so
Kyle
much better. Just think, in two years from now, some team is going to have Mitchell Trubisky as their backup quarterback. Another team is going to have Derek Carr as their backup quarterback.
Another team is going to have Jameis Winston as their backup.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Can we, right here live on the RotoBros podcast, can we just have Derek Carr versus Jameis Winston? Because I am here for that argument. I am here for it.
We need to. Hey, maybe next week we can make that a central part of the show just for fun. I'm sure a lot of listeners would have some takes on that. Hey, so real quick, let's get to the news and the notes. A lot of injuries. Mark, if we want to talk, I can't remember a week in fantasy where this many injuries occurred. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of weeks where, many weeks, there's a lot of injuries that occur. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, but not only did a lot of offensive fantasy players get hurt, a lot of significant offensive fantasy players got hurt. Like it wasn't like, okay, the fourth string wide receiver for the Giants got hurt. Like it was legitimate, meaningful football players for everybody's teams. It was an absolute bloodbath, a graveyard of sorts in round one. So we'll start off with a guy we just mentioned, Jameis Winston. He hurt his thumb. Guys, he is probable for week 15, so he is expected to be out there against Detroit, so that's good news. However, they will be sans Mike Evans. Mike Evans, obviously, as we just mentioned, had a big catch for 60-something yards, I believe, and a touchdown. So his fantasy day was ended up being okay, but right after that, or during that play, before he even got in the end zone, he pulled up with a hamstring injury. So he is actually out for the season. That's how serious that is. So, Mark, Chris Godwin is going to get targeted, but there's a guy on that offense that people need, well, actually two guys that people need to pay attention to. One of them is flying way under the radar, and that's Justin Watson. Justin Watson is an athletic freak, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people might want to target if they're desperate at wide receiver. And then Cameron Brate. Everybody's going to be like, oh, well, Mike Evans is out. Let's go get, this must be O.J. Howard's season. No, Cameron Brate's going to outplay him. You just watch.
You really think Cameron Brate's going to outplay him? I'm not trying to argue with you because I really don't know how I feel here. All I know is that O.J. Howard played 87.2% of the snaps last week. Cameron Brate only played 30.8%. O.J. Howard has seen at least 6 targets in each of his last 2 games, I believe, or at least 60 yards. It's one of those two. I'd have to look it up. You know what? Hey, producer man, please correct me on that. It was either he's seen 6 targets in each of the last 2 games or 60 yards in each of the last 2 games. It's one of those two, but still 87.2% of the snaps last week. He was on the field a ton, and you love to see that. I will say this though. I am concerned about the entire Bucs offense as a whole. It's a limited sample with Mike Evans off the field. He's only missed 84 snaps this year, but on those 84 snaps, 5.24 yards per pass attempt, explosive pass rate declines by 10%. It's more than cut in half. And passing success rate drops by 20%. So this offense, like Mike Evans is good. Mike Evans matters. He matters to this offense. He's the number one. Is there still anybody that's like confused? Mike Evans is the number one wide receiver for the Bucs. Always has been, and he's going to continue to be when he comes into the season in 2020. Chris Godwin obviously has a better fantasy season. He obviously, I don't think he got hurt any single game this year. So, he hadn't been dealing with injuries. So that's kind of helped him keep pace with Mike Evans for the fantasy year. And of course, he's ahead of him now. But, look, I wouldn't be saying this about, O.J. Howard, or Cameron Brate, rather, if we didn't have the history of great chemistry between Jameis and Cameron. Like if that had not existed, I'd be like, okay, maybe O.J. Howard's a play. But we know the history between Jameis and Brate. Like Jameis Winston loves Cameron Brate. I agree with when he gets on the field. And look, you mentioned the Bucs. I think you're right. Like I'm still deploying Godwin, obviously wherever I have him. I think Brate's a nice I'm desperate at tight end sort of. Like if you Jared Cook's out with a concussion this week more than likely. So if you're a guy who would typically deploy Jared Cook with the second half of the season he's been having, go scoop up Cameron Brate. I think you could do a lot worse than that. But yeah, I think you're right for the most part. This Bucs offense could be in trouble. We're not going to see Jameis go for 350 or more and 3 or 4 touchdowns. I don't see it this week. I think fantasy owners of Jameis Winston are in trouble. I definitely think they're in trouble. Let me ask you this. Now, we know Mike Evans is going to be off the field. Over the last 2 weeks, he's had a 16.7 ADOT. So that's relatively high. Chris Godwin's ADOT has only been 6.4. Do you expect Chris Godwin to not only absorb the usage, all of Mike Evans' usage, but the weighted usage as well? Because they have some guys in this offense that they like to deploy as deep threats, like Rashad Perryman, Justin Watson, you already mentioned. Justin Watson has seen 9 targets over the last 2 weeks. Rashad Perryman, good. 11 targets over the last 2 weeks. OJ Howard, 11 targets over the last 2 weeks. Cameron Brate's only seen 5.
Yeah, I don't know if I expect everything to go to Chris Godwin. I think Justin Watson's going to be very much involved in this offense. What is about very Rashad good.
Perryman?
I mean, I guess as a deep.
He's threat, been involved.
Like, I just been involved. I know. I just can't get on board with Rashad Perryman. He was so disappointing coming out. Like his it's almost sort of at the Corey Davis level without the injuries. Like you had all these huge expectations, and you get 4 years into the career, and all of a sudden, it's just not there for him. But I mean, it's possible. I don't think people need to be relying on Rashad Perriman. I think Justin Watson is a much better ad. But Watson's one of those guys that's extremely talented, and he's a physical freak. And it's kind of like, we knew that there was a sleeping giant waiting to be woken up in Chris Godwin. We knew it for the first couple years of his career. We were just waiting on it, and it's finally happened. It could be that same thing with Justin Watson. Obviously, he'll likely be in Tampa next year, of course, and he's not going to get the targets with Chris and Mike there. But for the rest of the season, I think Justin Watson could be a pretty solid addition for a team that's desperate, and for a team that maybe, Mark, lost Calvin Ridley, because Calvin Ridley is another wide receiver that's out for the season. He's got an abdominal injury, so it's the Julio show in Atlanta again. And for owners, we're getting ready to talk about players that failed you in round one. One of those is Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper was one of those guys that was coming back from injury last week. You almost had no choice but to deploy him, as you typically were for the beginning of the year, since the beginning of the year. And he obviously let us down for whatever reason. But now with Calvin out, maybe Austin Hooper gets some more looks.
It's really interesting to look at with Calvin Ridley off the field. The first thing that I notice is Julio Jones' target share actually drops with Calvin Ridley off the field. I don't think that is something we can expect full time. We have a decent sample size of Calvin Ridley off the field, 183 snaps. Yards per pass attempt has actually increased by about half a yard. Explosive pass rate has stayed about the same. It's a difference of 0.3%. Passing success rate is actually 16% higher with Calvin Ridley off the field. I'm interested. I'm really interested in pretty much the whole offense. There's no Mo Sanu there now. So there's a role here for Justin Hardy. There's a role here for Russell Gage. I think Julio is going to dominate the target share. I think we could see a 30% target share week for Julio. As far as tight ends are concerned with Austin Hooper has seen a 7.9% increase in target share with Calvin Ridley off the field this year. His red zone target share has actually increased by about 11% as well. So if he let you down in week one, but you still made it, or in round one, but you still made it through to round two, fire up Austin Hooper. You're keeping Austin Hooper in your starting lineup.
I didn't make it. All the teams that I have Austin Hooper on were eliminated in round one. So now I don't get to bear those fruits this week.
Well, that's because you suck.
Apparently. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Another wide receiver that's out for the season, Alshon Jeffrey. It looks to be
I'm gonna stop you right there. I have heard this one before.
Well, you're gonna hear it again. So Alshon Jeffrey out for the season. It looks to be a torn Achilles. Mark, it was non-contact. He was coming, bursted off the line. And, unfortunately, he pulled up, and it was sort of an immediate sort of thing. He didn't even get into his route at all. So Alshon Jeffrey has got a pretty serious foot injury, so he is out for the season. The Eagles, Mark, they had to resort to, they had Arcega-Whiteside get hurt. Nelson Aguilar got hurt and didn't play. Alshon Jeffrey got hurt and didn't play. They were down to 4 wide receivers in the game. They ended up putting Josh McCown, the backup quarterback, out at wide receiver at one point. Greg Ward was the only healthy wide receiver that they brought up the practice squad recently. So this is an offense right now. I mean, they're fighting like hell, and the ice running through Carson Wentz's veins. I mean, that overtime win, are you kidding me? The Eagles are doing everything they can to keep pace with the Cowboys, or maybe it's the reverse. We don't really know. Nobody really seemingly wants to win that division, but they're doing what they can. They need some help, man. But Alshon, unfortunately for them, is not going to be there. So, again, another wide receiver out for the season. Darius Geis.
Hey, hold up. Short answer here. Are you playing Carson Wentz next week? Yes or no? I think there's a right answer here.
Let me put this. Both leagues that I'm into, that I went into round 2 on, one of them I've got Carson as my backup. The other one I've got Russell, so no. The other one, I don't have another quarterback. So Carson Wentz there, and it's a big dynasty league. So I don't have anybody else to put in for Carson Wentz. So I'm in trouble at the quarterback position. I'm not excited about it whatsoever, and there's been no news of them signing anybody yet. So there's people that own Carson Wentz, again, we talked about a couple weeks ago, he was one of the guys that I said during the playoff week, trust Sam Darnold, trust Carson Wentz. They're going to win you some games. They have, but now it's gotten so bad on that offense for Carson, it's too risky to roll that dice.
Yeah, you can't play Carson Wentz. I think, like I said, I think there was a right answer here, and it's just been brutal with Alshon out. 6.4 yards per attempt compared to 7.34 with him. Explosive pass rate drops. Passing success rate drops by 3%. It's just not pretty. It's not pretty at all. And you can't play Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it's gotten pretty gross and disgusting up there in Philadelphia right now. But somehow they're still in the playoff hunt. Darius Geis, a team in the NFC East that is not in the playoff hunt. The Washington Redskins, and just got worse for them. Darius Geis, with an MCL sprain, he is going to be out for week 15, but there is a possibility he could play. But to me, Mark, it just makes too much sense. Just shut him down for the year. You got nothing to play for, Shut him down for the year. Give the reins to Peterson, and bring back Geis next season, and let's give him a third go at it. And then if something happens next year, maybe they'll probably even draft a running back this year too at some point in the mid to late rounds, just for insurance purposes. Or at least bring in a quality backup. But Darius Geis, again, he's going to be out for week 15, so you can't rely on him either. Josh Jacobs is nursing a shoulder injury. He is probable for this week, but John Gruden came out and said just a couple hours ago that he's not guaranteeing that Josh Jacobs plays. So he's on the more probable side of questionable, but since the probable designation officially doesn't exist anymore in the NFL, questionable is the tag for Josh Jacobs right now. So let me ask you: if Josh Jacobs plays, are you pretty much deploying him as healthy as? Are you deploying him as confidently as you typically would?
Josh Jacobs? I mean, honestly, if he's playing, I'm playing Josh Jacobs. If he's active, I'm playing him.
Agreed.
I think it's as easy as that. If Josh Jacobs is active, I'm playing him.
Okay, so cruising through some more of these injuries here. We got through Jameis and Darius and some of the wide receivers that were out for the season. Another wide receiver injury, but this time he's not out for the season just yet. DJ Chark is nursing a foot injury. He is week to week. He's not likely to play this week, so he is on the more doubtful side of questionable. So he's not likely to play. So have some other plans in place for round 2 of the fantasy playoffs if you own DJ Chark.
I think that's an interesting one, to be honest with you. The team's passing game really hasn't been significantly worse without him. Passing success rate drops by about 4%. Explosive pass is about the same. Yards per pass attempt is actually higher with him out. Would I suggest otherwise that DJ Chark is a substantial loss? Yeah, of course I would. But there is going to be usage that somebody is going to step into, and I think Chris Conley, if you're in a pinch, if you lost Mike Evans and you don't trust your bench, Chris Conley has seen a 23.5% target share with DJ Chark off the field this year.
Let me make this easy for people. The only Jaguar that you're playing this week is Leonard Fournette. I'm not trusting Chris Conley personally. I'm not trusting Dede Westbrook. I just think you could probably find some better options. Hey, we might even mention some later on the show because we're going to talk about some best plays for Week 15, round 2 of the playoffs. So definitely hang around for that as well. But again, DJ Chark is out, so the offense, the Jaguars just look even more
well, I think this could be
beat up than they already were.
I think it could be a substantial boost for Leonard Fournette too. I mean, I'll say he's seen a 20.6% target share with Chark off the field compared to 17.7 with him out. I just wouldn't write off Conley that quickly. Conley is seeing some nice weighted usage too.
He's had a decent year. I'll give him that.
Well, I mean, it's not like he's had like a great year, but he's definitely seeing a decent amount of weighted usage, and that's something I appreciate in DFS and in fantasy. Like if you lost Mike Evans, if you lost DJ Chark, and dude, there are people out there that lost both Chark and Mike Evans.
Justin Watson or Chris Conley this week. If both are on the waiver, who are you playing?
Chris Conley.
Oh, wow.
I'm playing Chris Conley and I'm not thinking twice about it.
Wow, I'm thinking four times about it.
We know Chris Conley's going to be on the field. Chris Conley's going to play 80 to 90% of the snaps. You can't say that about Justin Watson. Justin Watson might only play 50% of the snaps. He only played 55% last week.
Allen Hurns is a guy that I would play over Chris Conley. I think that's fair.
I think
Parker's
you're nuts.
Questionable.
I think you're nuts. Allen Hurns, like I get the process with Allen Hurns, and I mean, would I still argue it? Yes. But how can you tell me that Allen Hurns has more upside than Chris Conley?
The matchup, playing with Fitzpatrick, loves to throw the ball downfield. Allen Hurns is a great deep threat, or I won't say great, but a solid deep threat. So I mean, that's just, if I'm playing for big points here, I'm gonna trust Allen Hurns just a little bit more over Chris. But look, I'm not gonna argue with anybody who wants Chris Conley. I just feel like there's probably some better options. Justin Watson being one of them. If it's between the three, I'm taking Justin Watson. I think the upside is a lot higher with a guy like Justin Watson.
I like Justin Watson as a prospect. I mean, he's got crazy measurables. I don't have them on hand, but if you're listening to this podcast and don't know the name Justin Watson, I strongly recommend you pull him up on Player Profiler. He is a very good prospect, and I think he's an absolute buy in Dynasty right now. But, I mean, as far as Chris Conley is concerned, 29% air yards market share over the last 4 games. Like he's seeing weighted usage, and DJ Chark's 21% target share is up for grabs right now. Chris Conley is going to see weighted usage. He's going to get targeted, and there's going to be a ton of air yards underneath them. That's my thing with Chris Conley. I think he's a good play this week. It's like, I understand your stance on, do I trust him? I get it, but it's not so much the player I'm looking at. I trust the spot. He's going to play 90% of the snaps. He's going to be targeted, and he's going to see air yards underneath those targets. Like, this is exactly what you want, especially if you're somebody that just lost Mike Evans and DJ Chark, one or the other. It doesn't matter. If you don't trust who's on your bench right now, and I'm in a few spots where I lost Mike Evans, I am picking up and playing Chris Conley.
There's an argument to be made for it. I will say that. Mark Andrews has a thigh injury. He seems to be week to week, so he's sort of questionable for this week as well. So keep an eye on that, guys. Noah Fant is also dealing with a week to week injury, but it's a foot. So a guy that really seemingly seems to have some good chemistry with a guy we're going to talk about later on the show, Drew Lock. Noah Fant has really kind of come along here. By the way, are you a Fant or Fant guy? Are you Font or Fant? Because I'm typically a Font guy.
I've always said Noah Fant.
I know it's probably Noah Fant, but I Noah Font for me. Maybe I gotta get that fixed. But I'm curious. I'm like, there's 2 people in the world. You're either a Font or a Fant guy. So Font is he is week to week with the foot injury. So keep that in mind if you got some tight end issues. Luckily for you, we're gonna get into some tight ends that could some players that could help you in round 2. Coming up here shortly, and there are some tight end names to know as well. And then Pat Mahomes dealing with a hand injury. He is probable for week 15. So if you're thinking about rolling out Pat Mahomes, you shouldn't be thinking about it. You should be planning on it. So anyway, Mark, some players that really let us down. A lot of people got let down in week 1. We're in FSA. We're seeing a lot of people talk about, we allow people to vent in there. So we see people venting about some of the bad luck they're having and, oh my God, why couldn't Benny Snell do his thing? Or why did I get Jameis Winston, like you did? But a lot of players that failed you in round 1. What were some of the most disappointing players for you in round 1?
It's hard to say that he disappointed, but I have DJ Moore on every single team that I made the playoffs in. He was my most heavily drafted player in season long, one of my most heavily drafted players in best ball. And I mean, he's been seeing 10 plus targets each of the last several weeks. And for him to only see 6 targets in this game where Greg Olsen was out, it was a bit disappointing. He still delivered a decent PPR stat line. Like, I can't be genuinely upset with 4 for 81, but it was really, really tilting to see Ian Thomas see 10 targets, lead the team in air yards, and catch a touchdown while DJ Moore only sees 6 targets. That was extremely tilting for me.
Yeah, you hate to see those weeks, don't you? You hate to see those weeks. It's unfortunate. I deployed DJ Moore in a few leagues as well, and it didn't work out very well for me. Another guy that for me that it didn't work out very well for. He was better than he has been the last few games, but Tyler Lockett again just kind of had one of those sort of mediocre games. He caught 4 balls, 6 targets, 43 yards. 10.8 yards per catch. So I mean I guess that's a good thing, but just they gotta. This is a week though coming into Carolina. Maybe this is it. If you're still deploying Tyler Lockett in round 2, hopefully you made it. If you were doing it in round 1, the Panthers 30th in the league giving up to yards to wide receivers, 22nd in the league in fantasy points given up to wide receivers. So maybe this is the week that Lockett breaks out of this slump. Cooper Kupp was in a slump. He broke out of it finally. So maybe this is the week for Tyler Lockett, but he was another guy that disappointed. I think
we need to talk about both of those guys you just mentioned. Here's my stance with Tyler Lockett. It is worth noting that he tied DK Metcalf for the team lead in target share, but he dominated the air yards market with a 30% air yards market share. I think that's important. So I think at least the usage we were used to seeing with Tyler Lockett might be back. As far as Cooper Kupp is concerned, does anybody have an explanation as to why he only played 28% of the snaps?
I could not tell you, and it is perplexing.
I don't need people to tell me that they just played a bunch of 12 and 21. I understand that and I get that, but Robert Woods was on the field for 98% of the snaps. Josh Reynolds was on the field for about 65% of the snaps. Brandon Cooks was on the field for about 35% of the snaps. Why did Cooper Kupp only play 28% of the snaps? That scares the living hell out of me.
It's puzzling, but you're still, if you got him in round 2, you're still, if you're still alive in round 2, you're still deploying Cooper Kupp, obviously without issue. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown. That's the only thing I think people really care about. He got the touchdown, he got him points, but there's no excuse. Like, he should be getting more than 4 targets. He should be playing a much higher percentage of the snaps. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I went back and looked, and I just kind of get the feeling like at the point of the season where they started to get Gerald Everett more involved, and now it's obviously turned to Tyler Higbee with Everett off the field. When they have started to get the tight end more involved, it has meant sort of a down tick. It's been a bad thing for Cooper Kupp. Like, it's not. He's usually that safety blanket on those shorter routes where he's getting a little more yards after the catch. But now that just seems to be working for the tight ends now. No, I mean, Kupp's still doing his thing for the most part, but not to the level that we saw during the first 8 games of the season. You know what I mean? It's very, very puzzling. During the first 8 games, Mark, 5 of those weeks he had 10 or more targets.
Yeah, and a big problem here is this ascendance of Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee over the last 2 games, 19 targets, 25% target share, 33% air yards market share. And the thing that scares me the most about this, him and Cooper Kupp have almost identical ADOTs. Tyler Higbee's ADOT over the last 2 weeks has been 9.9, Cooper Kupp 10.2. So the weight of their targets is about the same. It's almost like Tyler Higbee is absorbing all of this usage that we're used to seeing Cooper Kupp seeing. That is a huge problem. And typically I agree with you. Like, if you have Cooper Kupp going into round 2 of the playoffs, like, you have to play him, but I'm not confident about it at all.
2 other wide receivers that had some trouble. They play on the same team. A lot of people were expecting some good things out of them, even with Eli Manning under the helm for Daniel Jones this week. Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate really disappointed in the game against the Eagles on Monday night. They had a teammate, though, that did not. We'll get to him in just a second. But yeah, Shepard and Golden Tate were two other guys that disappointed. We just talked about Austin Hooper at tight end, another tight end that didn't do great, that really crapped the bed for a lot of people, including you and I, who we were extremely high on him. Jack Doyle against Tampa Bay of all teams. There just almost wasn't an excuse for that with T.Y. Hilton off the field. But probably the biggest bust for the round one of the fantasy playoffs. And there's names that you could deploy out there, but he would have to be at the top. Alvin Kamara. This has not been, I think we knew, I remember you and I talking about this. How would the loss of Mark Ingram affect it? Everybody typically thinks when you have two good running backs or two good players on a team and they sort of complement each other perfectly, if one is out of the equation, everybody just assumes that the other person is just going to be like some sort of superhero for the rest of the time, for the rest of the season. It does not work that way. And many times it doesn't work out that way. And look, I was one of those people that said, okay, I'm cooling it on Alvin Kamara a little bit, but not to this extent. He was still a top 5 running back for me this year. This season has been tough for Alvin Kamara and David Johnson and Saquon Barkley. Man, what do you make of Kamara in round one?
It's absolutely brutal with Alvin Kamara. It's so tilting because he's getting the usage. He's on the field. He's playing over 70% of the snaps in all of his games. I mean, week 13, 82% of the snaps. Week 14, 76.4% of the snaps. Week 12, 66.7% of the snaps. He's on the field.
There's no excuse for it. I can't think of anything. Jared Cook's been solid the last few weeks, but it's not like Jared Cook has turned into, old school Jimmy Graham. Of course, Michael Thomas is going to be great, but you know what I mean? It's not like several years ago before Alvin Kamara where you had you had Boston Scott and you had Chris Ivory and you had the dude buddy as well as the third string runner. I can't remember who his name. I can't remember his name at the time. But they were deploying 3 running backs. So if they were doing that now, that's okay. That's an explanation. I don't see an explanation for this lack of production with Kamara.
It's touchdown regression, dude. It was always coming. It just hit Alvin Kamara late. Alvin Kamara was scoring touchdowns at a disgusting clip. And now he's just not. He's got 1 touchdown all year. Listen, Alvin Kamara was doomed for touchdown regression. Now he's doomed for positive touchdown regression. He went from scoring all the touchdowns to 0 touchdowns. This dude still has a 23% target share over the last 4 games. 33 targets over the last 4 games. He is getting usage. Usage is not the problem. He's on the field. He's seeing opportunities. He's not making big splash plays. He's not getting into the end zone. And I think we need to look at that injury he was dealing with as part of the cause.
It's possible. And I know we're sitting here talking about Alvin Kamara like he's RB38 on the year, and he's not. He's RB11. He's an RB1 for the season, right? He's not playing like it right now when you need him the most. But he's got 2 touchdowns on the year, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air.
They came in the same game.
Yeah, and it's like the rest of the season you haven't really been able to trust him. But then again, he's averaging 16 I think right at 16.9 points per game. So he's RB9 when it comes to points per game and RB11 in total fantasy points in PPR. So it's a very strange year for Alvin Kamara. It's not as bad as what it looks like, but man, it feels terrible.
He is a stone cold buy next year. Dynasty redraft doesn't matter. He is a stone cold buy. This is the lowest his value might be for the next 3 years.
Same with Saquon. Saquon's an even bigger buy, in my opinion.
I would agree with you that Saquon is absolutely a buy, but is anybody really going to sell Saquon below market value just because of an underwhelming injury-laden year? No, I don't know anybody that would. I agree with you. If somebody is nervous on Saquon Barkley for whatever reason, hammer the trade button. I just don't see somebody actually being genuinely concerned with Saquon Barkley and being willing to sell for a reasonable below market value offer.
Okay, so those were some of the players that kind of wet the bed for you in round one. But if you survived in round one of the fantasy playoffs, you likely survived because of one of the names we're getting ready to talk about here. Mark, Aaron Jones was spectacular this week. We knew that the being at home against the Redskins, we knew this was set up very well for Aaron Jones. And if there was going to be a week where he was going to bust out of this little slump he's been in, it was going to be this past week. Now, of course, you and I were on the wagon several weeks ago, and I don't think we were wrong about it, because he was never going to be held, he was never going to be held down forever. He was going to have a good game eventually, but you were not able to trust him. I mean, it was getting to the point where you just were not able to trust him any longer with the usage, with Jamal Williams and the way he was playing. So that's why we told you guys several weeks ago, sell Aaron Jones for another running back that, that's getting more work and getting more usage, and that you can also, continue to trust as well. But if you kept Aaron Jones, it probably paid off if you deployed him in round one. So Aaron Jones, is he back on track for a consistent basis? Or do you think this is just sort of one of those things where, okay, he blows up in 1 week of the playoffs and now he's going to disappear the rest of the way?
It's so hard to say if he's back or not. His usage just isn't consistent. He was extremely active in the passing game this past week. So I get the concept of, like, is Aaron Jones back? He saw a 25% target share. 7 targets, 6 catches, 58 yards. That's 12 fantasy points right there before touchdowns and before rushing yards. So I don't want to say he's back. If we see more of the receiving work, yes, that's great. And don't take this wrong. You're not sitting Aaron Jones, but I don't have the confidence that he is going to drop 20, 30 fantasy points every week. I don't have the confidence that he's going to see a 25% target share every week.
Devontae Freeman was another running back coming back, big time for the Falcons. He had a pretty solid game against Carolina, so he really stepped it up for a lot of players. A lot of people have been very nervous about Devontae Freeman, obviously playing on a bad team and all this kind of stuff, and always seemingly dealing with an injury. But Devontae Freeman came through for you in round one. Now, obviously, round two on the road against the Niners, you probably want to pivot to somebody else.
Yeah, probably. Hey, what about Austin Eckler?
Oh, God.
31.3 fantasy points. Saw a 19% target share, 112 receiving yards, and a touchdown. I thought he was going for the double bonus on DraftKings. Did he get it? How many rushing yards did he finish with? He got over 100 receiving. I don't know if he got over 100 rushing.
Yeah, he was spectacular. And, we talked about, I got Benny Snell and you got Jameis Winston. I'm going to tell you right now, he had 101 rushing yards, by the way.
He double bonused. That's awesome.
It's unbelievable. And so I got Ecklered as well, because in my work league that I was so proud that I was able to pull off that DK Metcalf was able to save my season and get me into the playoffs. I lost because of Austin Eckler, and I'm not happy with Austin Eckler. I'm happy with him because I also moved on in a league because of him. But in a more important league, a league I consider more important, he killed me. And I got blown out. What was it? It looks like 141 to like 101, I think. So a 40-point blowout for me. And Austin Eckler finished with 31.3 fantasy points. And it just, the guy had Carson, he had Austin Eckler, he had Sam Darnold, he had Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp, Kenny Galladay, Steelers defense. Like, it was Robbie Gould. It was just it was hellacious in that league for me. So
the absolute toughest of scenes. That's brutal.
Yeah, nothing I could do there. But that's the thing. Like, a lot of people, it is upsetting when you take it as seriously as we do, guys. Like, it's obviously upsetting when you lose. But Mark, I would much rather lose in a fantasy in a crucial fantasy game where I don't have any hope and where, like, there's nothing that I could have done, But if I leave somebody on the bench,
I'm not quite sure where you're going with this. I would rather my team be just absolute garbage than have my team go freaking nuclear and still lose. I cannot handle that, and that's one of the reasons why I play DFS and best ball. Like, I had Lamar Jackson, I had Nick Chubb, I had Austin, I had Aaron Jones, I had Tyler Higbee, I had DeAndre Hopkins. I scored 170 points in PPR, and I lost because this dude had Jameis Winston, who dropped 56 freaking points in our scoring format. And it's a fairly normal scoring format, just with a couple of bonuses. 56 points. Going into the afternoon games, I had a 50-point lead. The dude had Julian Edelman, Hunter Henry, Melvin Gordon, somebody else, I don't know. Every single highlight on Red Zone was another touchdown for the dude that I was playing, and I was losing my damn mind, and yeah, I cannot so handle
because you know, when you're watching Red Zone and Scott Hansen goes to another game, this just happened in Washington. You're like, oh my God, yes, and then you see it's your opponent's player, and you're like, no, I wasn't ready. Unfortunately,
it's like, yep, saw this coming. It was just so freaking tilting. Every single highlight for like 5 minutes straight was one of my damn opponent's guys that he had on his team. And I was just like, literally in a span of like 5 minutes, his team scored like 6 total touchdowns. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Well, story time. So in my most important league, I've been commissioning this league with some of my closest friend, my local friends here for, I think we're going on year 11 now. And so I started Carlos Hyde at running back, and I started because I lost James Conner. So I started Carlos Hyde in one of my flex spots. It's a league with 2 flex spots. The other flex spot was Christian Kirk. I started those guys over. You ready for this? Here you go. Darius Slayton and Emmanuel Sanders.
No.
Oh, no. And I still would have lost. Believe that. So there's nothing I could have done there. But to just I get it. I'm not going to apologize for benching, freaking Emmanuel Sanders. The guy's been terrible the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's done nothing the last 4 or 5 weeks. But I should have trusted one of my darlings, my draft darlings, and my 2019 darlings in Darius Slayton against Philly. And I didn't, and I paid the price. I will trust him moving forward. But yeah, that's gut-wrenching having it on your bench. The only silver lining, like I said, is that there's nothing I could have done. I got blown out anyway, so it didn't really matter at the end of the day. So it's just the time of the year where it just can ruin an entire day for you. Speaking of Darius Slayton, Mark, Darius Slayton, 2 rookie wide receivers that we were both big on. Darius Slayton, A.J. Brown, almost identical stat lines. 5 catches, 154 yards and 2 scores for Darius. 5 catches, 153 yards and 2 scores for A.J. Brown. I mean, A.J. Brown, Ryan Tannehill, the Tennessee Titans.
It was so stupid on my end, too, because all week long in the Discord, I kept talking about Ryan Tannehill and cash. He was 5.8, one of the league leaders in yards per attempt, going up against a notorious pass funnel in the Oakland Raiders. Me and Joe talked up Ryan Tannehill the entire DFS podcast, playing him in cash in DFS. And for some reason, I didn't want to play AJ Brown. I don't know why. It was so stupid. Like, what? You dumbass. Why don't you just play AJ Brown and move on with Ryan Tannehill? And I was just like, nah, brah. Naked Tannehill and move on. Freaking idiot.
Yeah. Tannehill has been pretty incredible. And it's interesting because he's playing so well that if he does this the rest of the year and into the playoffs, I've got them making the playoffs. But if he does this,
how do the Titans not make the playoffs?
They're still in a wild card fight, but I'm looking at it 2 weeks ago when I made that bracket for my late season playoff predictions, and when I had the Titans in there, I'm like, do I really think the Titans are going to lock this up? Yeah, they're red hot, and I just think that they're just too good right now.
They're just one of those teams that like you do not want to run into in the playoffs.
But it's like a good and bad thing because one of my best friends is a Titans fan. Kevin Fouch, I'll give him a shout out. One of my best friends is a Titans fan. And I mean, if I'm a Titans fan, I'm almost a little concerned. Like, I want to win the Super Bowl. I want to win playoff games. I want to make the playoffs. I want to see my team do well, my quarterback do well. But do I want the quarterback to be Ryan Tannehill? Because if this continues to happen, he does this the rest of the year, I mean, we might be looking at going into 2020 with Ryan Tannehill as the starting quarterback, and they might not even have a high-end drafted rookie on the team. So, I mean, there could be
they're already talking about structuring him a deal to make him the starter.
Oh,
I know that was in talks.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake, but I like what he's doing right now. It is a mistake, and it is not going to last into 2020. They need to get a quarterback.
We have like 5 years worth of reliable data and film suggesting Ryan Tannehill isn't what we're seeing. This is the first time we've seen Ryan Tannehill in a system that isn't Miami, or just in a spot that isn't Miami. It looks like what they have is something that's working for him. I don't want to be the first to write him off and just say, yeah, this is a fallacy, but
you could be the second. I'll be the first.
It's hard to disagree with you, Chris. It really is. I get what you're saying. Let me ask you this. Who would you rather run into in the playoffs right now, Houston or Tennessee?
Oh, Houston. because here's the thing. I'm not ready. I know everybody wants to put Deshaun Watson in Canton. I am not doing that. He's a very good quarterback. He's better at this point than what I thought he would be. I don't think he will ever ascend into elite quarterback status. But this is a guy, Mark, that just cannot learn how to get rid of the ball. He holds on to it so long, and he makes terrible decisions. The longer he holds onto the ball, the worse his decision making is. And it is unless he's using his legs. And that to me is going to be a huge detriment to the Texans if they make the playoffs. Because but look, if I'm a team in the AFC and I have to choose a team to run into, give me the Texans all day long. I don't want to see the Tennessee Titans with how hot they are right now.
No, I don't either, because they're hot on both sides of the ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, they are hot on both ends of the spectrum. I mean, Ryan Tannehill leads the NFL in yards per attempt right now, while Derrick Henry is just doing Derrick Henry things. It's disgusting.
And not only that, I would rather forget the quarterbacks. I'd rather see Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson than I would Derrick Henry. So yeah,
listen,
give me the Houston Texans.
Running backs don't matter, but I'm with Chris here. I would rather see Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson than whatever freaking mutant the Tennessee Titans are giving the football to in the backfield. That's Derrick Henry.
This is a guy, and he is a mutant. I have met him. I have shaken his hand, and I have a picture of me doing the Heisman pose right next to Derrick Henry.
Chris,
I got to brag on that. So we all went to the draft in April, so that was a lot of fun.
Have you ever played Fallout 3?
I have not. No, I'm more of an Assassin's Creed hitman sort of guy. Ghost Recon, if you will.
Oh, so you're a virgin. All right. Well, I already knew that. For those of you that played Fallout 3, tell me Derrick Henry isn't just one of the super mutants from Fallout. That dude is massive. That is a massive piece of humanity. It's insane.
Okay, so real quick before we move on to some to the best plays for Week 15, a couple other players that came through for you in round one. A guy we just mentioned that you don't want to touch moving forward. Two guys that you don't want to touch this week: Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz. So it was nice while it lasted, but you're not touching either one of them now. So have fun with it. Hope you have better options. Good luck in round two.
Who are the Jets playing? I mean, I'm not playing.
Baltimore.
Oh, they're playing Baltimore. No, yeah, it's a ner. It's a ner from me, dog.
Good luck with that. I think it's in Baltimore too. So yeah.
Yeah, Baltimore's at home.
No matter the circumstance, you are not benching Lamar Jackson. And I don't know. I know a lot of people are like, why is he even mentioning that? You'd be surprised.
Because people want to bench. Because we've been getting messages all week at FSA. Should I bench Lamar Jackson?
No.
Listen, if you bench Lamar Jackson, you're even dumber than I am.
Okay, so Lamar Jackson is obviously going to be a good play against the New York Jets at home in Week 15, round 2 of the playoffs. But who are some of the less obvious best plays, Mark? Maybe this is a guy who I think he was one of my top 5 wide receivers in the draft, and this pretty much went for everybody who was familiar with Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel he has absolutely turned it on, has he not? The 49ers are red hot, obviously. They are just not slowing down, and they have it even easier this week. They are at home, 4:00 game against the Falcons on Sunday. So I think if you are looking for a wide receiver to play, and maybe you lost, like we just mentioned earlier, Mike Evans, Alshon, Calvin Ridley, and you got Deebo on your bench, plug him in.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel, he seems like he should be a good play on the surface. My only concern is I typically haven't liked playing him if George Kittle is in the lineup. George Kittle's the alpha in that offense, even with
George
Emmanuel
Kittle's
Sanders
gonna kill
there.
it. George Kittle's going to annihilate it. Can we be honest?
George Kittle, he's going to smash. Are you playing Hollywood Brown against the Jets?
You know how I feel about these inconsistent deep threat wide receivers in season long, but
God, you are no
if
fun
I need
at
help,
all.
if I need help, yes, I probably am. He's got a solid, obviously a lights out matchup at home against the Jets, so I probably am. I guess it just depends on what my options are.
All right. Honestly, I think one of the best plays going into week 15 has to be Robert Woods. You know, over the last 4 weeks, nobody has a higher target share than Robert Woods, has also seen a 31% market share of air yards over that span. He's seen 36 targets over the last 4 games.
Yeah, he's another problem for Cooper Kupp, and I don't like it. Not happy.
Yeah, but Robert Woods is a better football player, so I don't really, I can't say I don't like it.
No,
Hell
I don't.
Yeah, Robert Woods is a better football player.
No, I don't believe. I don't trust that at all. I don't like that. I don't like you. No, it's not.
I don't like you.
It's
Okay,
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp or DJ Moore? Who's a better football player?
It's gonna be DJ Moore, and he's got the higher ceiling. It'll be DJ.
It is.
Moore,
It is
sure.
DJ
If
Moore.
Cooper,
I think
even if Cooper Kupp is the better player right now, this hour, he's not gonna be for long. I mean, DJ Moore is the choice there for sure. Fantasy and reality.
All right. Explain to me why Cooper Kupp is better than Robert Woods. Like I'm 5 years old.
It would take too long, I think. It would take too long. I just think that Cooper Kupp is so versatile. Like I get it. And I'm not, crapping on Robert Woods. I like Robert Woods. He's a good football player. But I just think that Cooper Kupp does more. I think he's the most important wide receiver for that offense. For the Rams,
as demonstrated by the utter dominance the team performed when he played 28% of the snaps.
Well, you can't win them all. You can't get them all right, Mark.
The only reason I think I disagree and that I think Robert Woods is a better football player is because I think he's more versatile. I think Robert Woods can do literally everything you can possibly ask a wide receiver to do, and he does it well. Robert Woods is like Stephon Diggs light. I think Robert Woods is a better football player. It's not by much, and I'm open to arguing it, and I'm open to hearing debates because it's not that I think Cooper Kupp is bad. I was low on Cooper Kupp this year going in because he was coming off an ACL. That was my concern, and I thought he was going to be third on the team in target share. So don't try using that against me if you're going to argue Cooper Kupp with me. I want, educate me. I'm a film guy and an analytics guy. I want to know why Robert Woods isn't better than Cooper Kupp. But going forward, man, I just the kind of volume that Robert Woods is seeing and the fact that Brandon Cooks and Cooper Kupp aren't on the field as much to vulture these targets away from him. He's seeing low ADOT PPR usage. He's also seeing high weighted usage with a ton of air yards underneath it. Robert Woods is just seeing all the usage, and I want it. I want to be a part of it.
Who's a better football player? Raheem Mostert, or as you put it, Raheem Mustart, or Tevin Coleman? I'll tell you, I think it's Raheem Mostert. I don't want to overreact to
Raheem Mostert, isn't it?
I don't want to overreact to the third string running back, seemingly blowing up the second half of the season. But I mean, Raheem Mostert is a phenomenal fit for this offense. And I just think that, there may be some times here where, okay, now Tevin's the guy, Matt's the guy, Raheem's the guy, hell, Jeffrey Wilson's the guy this week. But Raheem Mostert, man, has been pretty impressive. I mean, this is a guy, I think, again, we're talking about him. I think he's one of a really good, non-obvious, great play for round 2 if you need the running back help.
No, I think Raheem Mostert's a good play.
And look at his matchup. Look at his matchup.
Over the last 4 games, I mean, Raheem Mostert, in week 13, he played 73.7% of the snaps. Week 14 played 59.7. He's taken over the backfield. Like this is essentially his backfield now. Matt Breida has been phased out. Is Matt Breida still hurt? Is he still banged up? Is that why he's not really playing?
I don't know about his about any injury. He played a little bit, played several snaps last week. So
yeah, he's been active. He's just not getting on the field. Tevin Coleman is hardly seeing the field. Played 11 snaps against the Saints, 16.4%.
He's not playing well. I mean, he's not playing.
No, he's not. He's not. I mean, Raheem Mostert is just dominating. He's playing so well. He's a good athlete. He's got a very impressive player profile. So if he's not still out on the waivers, but I think if you have him on your roster, I think he's a good play.
We talked about tight ends earlier. Mike Gesicki and Cameron Brate, two guys that I like at tight end. If you are looking for tight end streamers, I think you could do a ton worse than these two guys. If you need,
are you starting them both over OJ Howard?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely Mike Gesicki. Without, okay. I won't even think about it. But yes, if I'm choosing between the two Tampa Bay tight ends and with Mike Evans out, yeah, I'll slide the chemistry and the history between Jameis and Cameron. I will definitely choose Cameron Brate over OJ Howard. Who are some players that you think are the some best under the radar plays for week 2 or round 2?
We'll get to that in a minute. Cameron Brate or Jack Doyle?
I'm not ready to give up on Jack Doyle. Even after that Tampa Bay game, it's disappointing, but I'm going to roll Jack Doyle out there again this week.
Yeah, I hear that. All right, well, I mean, I'm going to start with Chris Conley. Chris Conley is playing a defense that ranks second worst in yards per pass attempt allowed, and they rank dead last in explosive pass rate allowed. Matchups for wide receivers and quarterbacks don't get any better than the Oakland Raiders. That's why I think with DJ Chark out, this is just a perfect spot for Chris Conley to come in and crush, and he's probably on your waiver wire. Why not? Why not play Chris Conley in this spot? This is as good as spots get, and he's going to get usage. He's going to be on the field. All right, Chris, quarterbacks for a second. Let's say you've been streaming quarterbacks all season long. Are you playing Jared Goff this week?
Oh, it depends on my options, but I think I'd probably rather play Drew Lock over Jared Goff. I think there's a number of quarterbacks that I would rather play over Jared Goff this week. So if hopefully I don't have to, but it's totally reliant on the options. I just think there's way too many of them. That Kyler Murray, I would play Kyler Murray this week at home against Cleveland over Jared Goff. So yeah, I probably not, I guess would be the short answer.
I think Kyler Murray is a decent play, but for Jared Goff, I just love the way that game projects as far as pace is concerned. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fast-paced game. Both of those teams, especially Dallas. Dallas ranks in the top of the league in plays per game, so that should be interesting. Right now, I mean, it's got a good total. It's got a 49 live over/under. The Rams 25 implied team total. This just seems like a good spot for Jared Goff to me. I mean, as far as the pace of play goes, this is probably going to be the fastest paced game on game of the week. I mean, both of these teams like to move fast. We can probably project this game for close to 125 plays, 130 plays. I said this 2 weeks ago with the Cardinals on the DFS podcast, and with quarterbacks more than any other position is where you can play the game like DFS. Running backs, wide receivers, whatever, you obviously you want to play your studs, but with quarterback, especially if you're streaming, you're essentially playing DFS with one position. You're playing it with a quarterback. This is a good spot for Jared Goff. Dallas ranks 22nd in explosive pass rate allowed. This is the same defense that just got carved up by Mitchell Trubisky. If 125 or more plays are run in this game, Jared Goff has a great game.
The more I think about it, I'm thinking maybe this could be like a 42-35 sort of game. I mean, Dallas is in the range of desperation mode. I mean, this is it's really both teams in desperation mode at this point. I mean, I don't think the Rams are catching anybody, but Dallas is obviously still alive. So I think that's a lot of motivation there. So this could actually turn into be a pretty fantasy friendly football game.
That's exactly what I'm projecting. I think it's the highest paced game on the slate by far. And like I said, I mean, play projections, those are huge for the quarterback position. And if we can project 125 plays for this game, I want as many pieces of it as I can get. That includes Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup is a fantastic play this week.
I do agree with that. I think Michael Gallup's solid.
All right, Chris, how many quarterbacks, and feel free to name them, how many quarterbacks would you start over Dak Prescott this week?
Ooh, over Dak Prescott against Rams. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to name them all. You ready? Lamar Jackson, Drew Brees. Let's see. Patrick Mahomes. We will go Russell Wilson. Let's see. Moving on down the line. I will take over Dak Prescott. Right now, I'm sitting at 4, and I'm having trouble finding a 5th.
Would you play Josh Allen over him?
No, I would not. But that's a big statement for me because everybody knows that I love Kirk Cousins. No, Ryan Fitzpatrick. No, Rivers. No. Yeah, 4. That's four quarterbacks. That's it. Dak Prescott's a top 5 quarterback for me this week.
I am with you on Lamar for sure. You said Drew Brees. I'm kind of on the fence there. If Kenny Moore is out again, it looks like Kenny Moore is probably going to play. If Kenny Moore is out again, Drew Brees, I'm completely fine with. That team is allowing over 10 yards per pass attempt with Kenny Moore off the field. I was pounding the table on Jameis Winston for DFS purposes, and that was a big reason why. Lo and behold, Jameis threw for well over 400 yards and scored 5 total touchdowns. So Kenny Moore being out for Indianapolis, I think, is big. And if he is out, I think Drew Brees becomes a smash. Who are the other guys? Who are the other 2?
We had, let's see.
You had Lamar Jackson, Drew Brees. Who are the other 2?
Pat Mahomes and Russell Wilson.
Okay. I would definitely play Dak over Russell Wilson.
I know Russ is in a little bit of a slump. He's not doing terrible, but it's not first 8 games of the season, Russell Wilson. So I won't argue that. I won't argue that for him.
Yeah, I'd play him over Russell Wilson. Mahomes, probably not. I think I'm probably playing Mahomes.
You're definitely playing Mahomes, Mark.
It's not a good matchup, but Patrick Mahomes just has the safest floor along with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's is probably safer, but Patrick Mahomes just has such a safe floor, and he's got the Mahomes ceiling. So yeah, I think I would probably go, assuming Kenny Moore is out, I would go Lamar, Mahomes, Drew Brees, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff. Those are probably my top 5 quarterbacks this week.
High on Jared Goff. We'll see how that works out.
I'm very high on Jared Goff. I like the spot. Jameis, I want to be high on Jameis, but with no Mike Evans, I'd be concerned. Yeah. Okay. Would you play Jameis over Jared Goff?
No. Wait. No.
Play Jared Goff over Jameis.
I would play Jared Goff over Jameis. Yeah.
I think I would too. I'm confident in both plays. I just think Jameis's ceiling is a little bit lower without Mike Evans.
Yeah, and I wanna say something as well. Guys, be wary of Aaron Rodgers this week. I would be very, very cautious with Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers dominates bad defenses and then doesn't show up against good ones. That's who he is now.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. And
yeah.
I just think that this could be a very bad game for a lot of people that have Aaron Rodgers. So
it's an ugly game, low total, bad pace. I don't want any piece of this game except for Allen Robinson, Devontae Adams, and obviously Aaron Jones. You have to play Aaron Jones.
What I do want a piece of, I want a piece of the producer man, because it is that time for the producer man to tell us what we got wrong. Producer man, what you got for us?
Pretty clean show, guys. Just a few notes here. OJ Howard, from that conversation at the beginning of the show, he did only have 5 targets in week 14, but he has had 60 yards in each of the last 2 weeks. Chris Godwin, Chris mentioned that he hadn't had any injuries this year. He did show up on the injury report 3 times with that hip, and it did seem to limit him a little bit early on. The only other note here I have is that it's Noah Fant. There are 2 kinds of people in this world, the ones that say Fant and the ones that are wrong. So, other than that, great show, gentlemen.
Did you just say you want a piece of the producer man? What the hell was that?
Always want a piece of the producer man. All right. Thank you very much, producer man. We appreciate it as always. Guys, it's been a blast as always. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. Mark, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you.
You're going to find me on Twitter at Mark Wemken. That's MarkWemken. You're also going to find me at thequantedge.com every Tuesday, Thursday, and every weekend. Got slate breakdowns for you. I got showdown breakdowns for you, snaps and targets report, injury impact report. I got it all for you at thequantedge.com. Make sure you guys are checking out the Patreon as well. You're going to get exclusive access to our Discord chat where you'll have access to Chris and I and the producer man and Murphy Hamilton. And shout out to Goldie. Shout out to Eric Matthews. Some patrons that are always in there. I know some other patrons that are probably going to be mad that they didn't get a shout out. I'm going to shout out you guys next week. But yeah, make sure you guys are checking out the Patreon. Get into the Discord chat. It is lit, guys.
You can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell. You can find both Mark and I on Facebook at the Facebook group FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis, the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. Go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy, and check us out. You will not regret it. Guys, best of luck in round 2 of the fantasy playoffs. If you died in round 1, we are right there with you. But if you're still alive in round 2, we are going to be here with you as well all the way to the championship. So hopefully we can help you win that fantasy hardware. Guys, best of luck. Enjoy the games this weekend and go win in week 2. Move on to that championship game. And as always, keep balling, baby.